Visual metaphors are prominent within manga. They can be integral in allowing art to speak for itself, connotations and denotations mixed together to be interpreted into a figurative meaning. They can be used to provoke an emotion within the reader, to teach values and ethics in ways text can't. It's a step further into the simplicity of symbolism, an effective use being road signs, for example. Why use many words when a simple sign can encapsulate said words much faster and more universally? For design, it can be very effective to capitalize off humanity's global familiarity with imagery. Some mangaka incorporate those semiotics into their work creatively, allowing symbolism to visually interpret informative context, rather than multiple text boxes spelling it out to the reader. Taking advantage of this allows mangaka such as Satoshi Kon, who frequently blended mirages of imagination and reality as motifs towards social themes, to enhance his visual storytelling. Our Dreams at Dusk would not be the same story it is without Yuhki Kamatani's effective use of visual metaphors. The 4 volumes of this story live and breathe symbolic and analogous imagery, with drawing techniques being so succinct and articulate in demonstrating the lives of multiple LGBT+ characters within raw and sensitive scenes. I don't think this story would have been so well received, nor as effective through its narrative, without Kamatani's distinctive style that captures the harsh difficulties many LGBT+ people face in such hard-hitting ways. And that authenticity is more than likely due to Kamatani being both asexual and ex-gender themselves. Their own experiences of being a minority towards society's social norms makes for a story that for some readers may feel identical to their own struggles. Explorations of LGBT+ stories, or stories that include LGBT+ characters in general, isn't anything new. Whilst they might all convey the same messages, themes, and ideals, it's Kamatani's unique display of viscerally illicit metaphors that are most noticeable and memorable for me. Whilst there are breaking points in the manga that slap you in the face with its words, it's the pages with no text. The pages that solely rely on readers interpreting a strong feeling or intense sentiment that are so relatable in a way that gets me choked up. Kamatani themselves stated they find it easier to reflect abstract things through their drawings than putting them into words. And Kamatani's work speaks for themselves. Our Dreams at Dusk expresses the frustration of microaggressions, the daily toil oppression can emotionally take, and released all of that frustration into a story where its metaphorical imagery alone can speak 1,000 words. Before deep diving into the recurring themes within Kamatani's work and how they elevate each scene, I have to reel back and showcase one of the biggest influences of Kamatani's work, and that would be the importantly influential shoujo mangaka herself, Moto Hagio. Moto Hagio is part of the Year 24 group, a collection of well-established female mangaka who are influential and pivotal into shaping up shoujo manga into what they are today. With mangaka like Moto Hagio, Ryoko Ikeda, Keiko Takamiya, Minori Kimura, Tosie Kihara, and Yumeko Oshima, to name a few. This group of women were at the helm of revolutionizing shoujo stories within the 1970s, and wrote many of the classics that are still referenced today. Their stories carried central themes, delving into politics, gender identity, philosophy, and social class issues. And Moto Hagio explored these themes through beautiful pages that explored the usage of visual metaphors. In the episode of Manben that she attended, a show hosted by Naoki Urasawa as he talks with a variety of mangaka about their works, she stated that she finds the imaginative and metaphorical parts of her work to be some of the most fun, and notably demonstrates one of the first times she experienced being touched by a metaphorical-esque art piece.
寝ながらね、頭の中でこうずーっとリピートしていくんですよ。そしたらね、このコマだけセリフがどんどん増えてくるんですよ。親友だったのに僕はどうしてこんなことしなきゃいけないんだと。お前は私を裏切ってたのかとかね、ずっとセリフが増えていく。
膨らんでくるんだ。
これでハッと思って改めて読み返したら、2行しかないとか。
It's therefore easy to see where Kamatani's love for Moto Hagio's work comes from, with the combination of fantastical metaphors with intense emotions, to the exploration of gender and sexuality. Both combinations are majorly influential in Kamatani's work, Kamatani's use of separating scenes through different angles inside fluid compositions, or their application of dynamic shapes that reach out from the page, all come back to that Moto Hagio influence. The hollowed out, non-detailed characters against the busy, wavy lines in both works captures the inner feelings of the main character without a single line of text. Hagio's influence towards the way Kamatani introduces unconventional compositions onto their pages allows for each section to connect to another so vividly, smooth transitions from one scene to the next without having panel borders separating illustrations. The page that struck me the most with this practice was the scene of Haruko coming out to her parents as a lesbian. Coming out scenes are incredibly delicate to portray accurately, to depict the varying emotions that so many go through. It would have been simpler to showcase close-ups of Haruko's face, showing anguish and unease during an anxiety-inducing conversation. And yet, Kamatani instead refrains from this, rather showcasing Haruko's emotions through a crowbar, comparing the sensation of hazardously ripping away at buildings for renovation to coming out to family, with just a few quick words revealing the truth about herself she'd kept hidden, like ripping off a plaster in one go from an aggravated wound, leaving it exposed to the world with a swift and potentially painful motion. For Haruko, this was a moment of giving her ultimatum, both literally and figuratively knocking down the walls she put around herself, of frustratingly not being ashamed of who she is, and speaking her truth, whether her parents want it or not. Our Dreams at Dusk starts with a horrifyingly bleak beginning. A young boy named Tasuku so hindered and panicked by being outed in front of his classmates as gay that he contemplates suicide. It is a frighteningly and sadly realistic occurrence that happens across the globe, and in Japan specifically, where there are high suicide attempt rates amongst the LGBT community, it is but a horrible reminder of how far countries are yet to go in improving life for gender and sexual minorities. But it's the pages following on, once Tasuku returns to school the day after being outed, does Kamatani pinpoint that out-of-body, numb feeling of being despised and ridiculed for just being who you are. The slur that Tasuku used in a panicked self-defensive manner at the very beginning of the manga, that internalized homophobia which crept up on him as he struggled to act normal to his classmates, being thrown back at him. It's 3 simple words, and it terrifies him. Everything surrounding him becomes a shell of the real world, distorting into nothing but noise. Kamatani uses this fish-eye lens effect to reenact that indescribable feeling of being outed, having everything warp around you, life still moving and things happening out of your control, whilst you simultaneously stay grounded. For people to feel so distant, yet so uncomfortably close at the same time. Kamatani displays that stomach-dropping experience throughout further pages, of clouds appearing, people blending into more abstract features, the surrounding world feeling like a visual demonstration of suffocation, like a temporary hit of tinnitus, all sounds blending into one continuous ringing. The sense of fear and confusion overwhelming as everything warps and melts like a Salvador Dali painting, this sense of surrealism injecting fear into just a few pages. And it's hauntingly ironic that surrealism is brought up in this context, where Japan developed its own Japanese-style fauvism, often known as shuru, around the early to mid-20th century. Japanese artists started to design surrealism around that time, experimenting with imagery that didn't conform to the way the Japanese government liked. And Japanese artists who delved into surrealism, like Ichiro Fukuzawa, were not so dissimilarly treated like how Tasuku is treated in these sequences, being ridiculed and ostracized for not conforming to how society wants them to. And that pressure LGBT+ people face can feel so restrictive in life. Even for my own videos, I do all my recordings at night and a relatively low volume in fear of my family hearing the topics I talk about. It's an indescribable feeling that Kamatani so accurately portrays in their visual metaphors. But death and suicide aren't topics that Kamatani shies away from. It's a recurring theme throughout their stories. Their 2 depictions of death in their newest ongoing story, The End of the Journey, which isn't yet localized, struck me by how vividly they show the presence of death, without a mere mention of the word, utilising swans in a plethora of metaphorical devices, the themes of light, love, death, transformation and peace being the most intrusive in showing an elderly lady during her last moments of life. Both the reader's eyes and the flock of swans follow this lady to the focal point of the page, the light contrasting the dark, in a commonly known light at the end of the tunnel scenario. Whilst swans might symbolise light, they also symbolise transformation, initiated from the black swan theory, showing a metamorphosis of the cycle of life, much like the lady's life now transforming to the last step, which leads to the last symbology of the swan, peace, of course linking to the peaceful way of passing through old age. These analytical comments might sound overreaching to some, but it must be said that these connotations of the swan and other objects are what enables Kamatani to make textless pages like this translate a message so well, just by using symbolic imagery and metaphors. And this correlates to their other depiction of death in that manga, with a cascade of montage illustrations, flashes of memories with the main character and their best friend growing up together. They're enclosed within an abundance of Japanese morning glory flowers, which, more so in context for Japanese readers, will know the meaning of said flowers is love, affection and mortality. Morning glory flowers bloom and die within the same day, and even with a very limited knowledge of the Japanese language, it's easy to depict that something tragic has happened to the main character's best friend. Though, given the love analogy of the flowers and Kamatani's constant portrayal of LGBT+ characters is more so a love interest. Being able to pick up on these messages shows an effective use of visual storytelling, Kamatani once again exploring the undiscovered boundaries of developing narratives through imagery alone. Someone-san is probably one of the least abstract metaphors used in Our Dreams at Dusk, though I do say this loosely, for Someone-san is a mystery both to the reader and the cast within the story. In many ways they're a juxtaposition of death, being there as the distraction of Tasuku's attempted suicide, and appearing during many of the main cast's darkest moments. I say they walk the tightrope between abstract and reality, because in many ways Someone-san is a person. They walk, listen, breathe, talk like any regular human, and yet there's this intrigue to the way they're displayed almost as a metaphysical being. Someone-san, a person of no name, flies, disappears within the blink of an eye, and has detached themselves from society in ways to achieve contentment. Many have concluded that Someone-san may be somewhat of a self-insert of Yuhki Kamatani, this aloof asexual who expresses no outright emergence to label themselves within a gender binary, but it's their role within the story that seems ephemeral yet impermanent, never giving Tasuku words of encouragement but unsolicited advice in the form of listening. "Tell me anything, I won't listen though," being their repeated saying. Someone-san allows characters in the cast to vent, to express the frustrations of society's want for them to be who they aren't, with no return of commentary. Someone who exists but is conceptual, regularly flying from buildings, smoke and stars trailing behind them, perhaps as a way of signifying their freedom and openness of solitude. Someone-san is both unreachable yet constant in reappearing when Tasuku needed guidance the most, but their resolve in saying nothing towards Tasuku's issues may have been the step he needed in realising the best person to understand himself and treat himself better was himself. Sometimes people understand themselves better, not through being told the answers, but through being listened to and finding out they knew the answers all along. And yet, opposingly, Someone-san tries to stay anonymous even when Tasuku reaches out, reveling in just being, rather than finding a reason or title for their existence. And Tasuku doesn't understand this. I think many readers might not either, but it's the willingness to still support someone despite not understanding that is a great first step into acceptance. Space is continual, both in a literal sense and by how much Kamatani uses different depictions of space within multiple pieces of their work. It's used simply to demonstrate the world from an outsider's perspective, To be an observer, watching people achieve things that you wish to achieve, but not having the courage to. Dealing with issues surrounding solitude and isolation, much like the main character Yutaka in Shonen Note, a young soprano choir singer who feels each and every sound to an intense, sensitive degree. But most commonly in Kamatani's work, space is used within a magical sense, showing the ethereal performances from the singers in Shonen Note, where each lyric and sound executed from the main characters cross the boundaries of what we know, their voices carrying into the night. It's definitely hyperbolic, and to showcase the sound in an inaudible medium, but it definitely makes for beautiful pages. Which finally leads to the sci-fi elements of space, where Kamatani draws UFOs, a hobby of Tasuku's, as a way of representing alienation, of Tsubaki, the love interest of Tasuku in this story, being swept away and not really knowing himself nor how he truly feels about his own sexuality or his relationship with Tasuku, almost feeling like a foreign object himself. That sense of alienation and encapsulation corresponds to the other repeated visual metaphor, entrapment. I think Kamatani's repetitive motif of using water, fish, and fish bowls to correspond the feelings of entrapment is perhaps my favourite metaphor in Our Dreams at Dusk. Misora is the youngest character of the cast, a young kid who finds comfort when surrounded by others in the LGBT community, being able to express themselves through more feminine fashion and presentation, without warrant of judgment. At a young age, thoughts surrounding gender and sexuality, especially within a discriminative country whose laws still don't protect the LGBT community, can be confusing. With lack of resources about sexuality and gender, and a small amount of safe spaces, Misora is often shown being shameful and disorientated, confused about who they are, how to express themselves, and whether that's what they truly want. Kamatani comparing Misora to a fish in a bowl is the perfect analogy for that entrapped feeling. To be someone swimming in your own thoughts, it can be frustrating. Having to battle against cis-heteronormative and conservative thoughts and views, if that's all you've been taught and shown, it can take years before truly accepting yourself. There can be a lot of self-hate to push through, self-doubt and resentment, and most importantly, isolation. Just like the fish constantly shown in a bowl, Misora is trapped, feeling engulfed in these confusing feelings, whilst looking out and seeing others being happy. It never outright stated within the manga as to how Misora identifies, but being young and already so non-conformative in presentation compared to most, still allows for Kamatani to pull at readers' heartstrings. To see someone so young hiding what makes them happy and being overwhelmed when facing the public in feminine clothing. And yet, in a bittersweet scene, we see Tsubaki, a guy who many judge as the stereotypical athletic macho straight guy, look to the fishes as friends. It is still left up in the air as to whether Tsubaki himself isn't straight and suffers major compulsive heterosexuality, or if he is a straight guy who grows and learns from his bigotry through befriending so many LGBT characters in the cast as the manga progresses. Either way, I love the symbolic imagery of his fondness for the fishes, metaphorical to the elements of allyship, that even people as secluded and confused as Misora will always have people to talk to be comfortable around, whether that's other people in the community, finding compassion within friends, or talking to people online. Going through troubles and issues revolving LGBT issues is never something anyone should have to face in isolation. Expressionism is art made to communicate a meaning, to distort a scene in evoking an emotion within the reader, and Kamatani uses it ubiquitously in their work. Yuhki Kamatani uses Expressionism to demonstrate a breaking point within Tasuku's life, a moment of shattering clarity in which his true infatuated feelings towards Tsubaki are revealed. Heteronormativity had held Tasuku back throughout most of his childhood, making him hold back feelings and desires because of the country's more conservative views and influence on its people. Due to this, his trickling thoughts of Tsubaki, wishing to be wanted, to have the lightest touches of intimacy without homophobic backlash, erupted, Tasuku's true feelings being revealed and shattering that wall he'd built around himself as protection, and as relieving as it can be for some to put a name to the feelings you've been having, can be frightening to those who know they'll be punished or bullied for said feelings. It's hard to suppress and hide emotions and wants, or in Tasuku's case, to find out your feelings were that intense in the first place. It can make you think about every little action you've done in the past, make you rethink dynamics and recollect all the memories that led to that moment of realization that you're gay. And this is continued later in the manga, where Tasuku, now fully aware of his feelings for Sabaki, is overwhelmed by just their interactions. Attraction, or purely liking someone of the same gender, can be hard to manage. Emotions aren't meant to be controlled within that sense, and you can see Tasuku both trying to hide, nurture, and keep those feelings under wraps, to try and relish in those emotions whilst bottling them up. I like the euphemism of stars that Kamatani applies to Tasuku's feelings, something so bright, warm, and attractive, but perhaps a little too bright, something that is becoming harder and harder to hide before eventually those feelings will explode, like a dying star's last moments. One of the most globally admired paintings is The Starry Night, a painting rampant of expressionistic imagery with contoured forms making up whirling clouds and shining stars for a mesmerizing piece. A design so fluid and easy on the eyes to create a calming scenic landscape. Yuhki Kamatani follows a similar path, though not in the same impressionistic style as Vincent, regarding the similarity of gentle swirling compositions. The inclusion of stars and clouds creates a dreamlike state where everything melts away. A magical aura fills the scene as Tasuku feels comfortable enough to sleep in his surroundings of the lounge. The lounge is the main setting of the story, perhaps regarded as a second home for many, where all of the LGBT+ characters come together to create a safe environment to be who they are without fear of being discriminated. And that sense of calm, of being comfortable within the lounge, is a constant mirage, a metaphorical dreamlike house where no harm can be done, with bubbles of atmospheric illumination continuously surrounding the building and creating this positive beacon of blooming light. The lounge is a safe zone where emotions that were hidden can be revealed, all the hurt bubbled up inside let loose in a place of no judgment. And the lounge is a place of comfort the cast needs, because everything about being LGBT can be incredibly overwhelming. Having to correct someone of your gender, pronouns, that you're not straight. Those are just a few of the things people deal with daily, and much like how Kamatani pictured it on this page, it's the equivalent of being buried, of having problem after problem, a never-ending recurrence of dealing with intolerance. Having to blow off microaggressions because you just can't be bothered to pick up an argument. Having to laugh off homophobic jokes at family meals, to feel that stabbing pain of mistakenly being misgendered, and so much more. All those emotions can slowly eat away at people. Those commotions and scenarios being so common, it almost feels robotic in the repetitive way you react to them. Like how alien and foreign it feels for Tasuku to imagine himself romantically involved with a girl. Kamatani draws him and a faceless girl in this abstractical way to show a sense of forced conformity. Tasuku knowing full well a heterosexual relationship is what is expected of him, and yet he's not even able to picture himself in that scenario properly. Or similar to how Haruko is drawn, ashamed and overshadowed by her father's words in regards to two women getting married, something she herself desperately yearns for with her girlfriend Saki. Even if I were to replace the speech bubble, you'd know what is being interpreted here. A woman who strives in wanting to marry a woman she loves, but being overcome by the reminder that homosexuality just isn't the norm. And that's an immense amount of baggage to carry. Kamatani punching readers with poignant, disheartened emotions through a relatively simple page. One of my favourite sequences in Our Dreams at Dusk is this quaint moment of delicacy between Tasuku and Sabaki, a quite literal picturesque moment of importance within their relationship. Tasuku shows his recollection of happy memories, the good, the bad, and everything that makes him human, because despite how society tries to frame gay people, we still hurt and experience suffering at the hands of actions and words. And that was something Tasuku wanted Sabaki to realise due to his own decisions of being intolerant and prejudiced during moments of the manga. Realising his actions, whether unintentional or not, were harming people. People who didn't deserve it for just trying to live their lives like a normal person. Our Dreams at Dusk is a nuanced story showcasing the lives of people within the LGBT community and the daily issues they face. It's ignited by Yuhki Kamatani's analogies, an overall unique display of stunning illustrations. They flaunt emotive imagery and heart-wrenching realities in each of their stories. I have no uncertainty that Our Dreams at Dusk is a manga that will stick with me for a long period of time. And it's all thanks to Yuhki Kamatani for taking the risk of representing the LGBT community through visual metaphors, giving the community a voice in a medium that is silent. As always, thank you for watching. As a little announcement, I'm now an official affiliate with Amazon, so for any manga videos I create, I'll be putting Amazon links in the description of said manga I mention, and if you purchase the manga through the link, I get a little cut of the commission of which I will put towards the channel. And on top of this, I also created a Patreon, so I just wanted to massively thank all the people who have supported and become a patron since I created one. I really appreciate the support. Thanks again for watching, and if you haven't already, check out my previous manga videos.